This story begins in Norway during the year 1940, a time when World War II was wreaking havoc across the globe. Hitler was invading country after country, and now Norway was his next target. The German forces had already reached Norwegian soil, and to stop them, the Allies devised a secret mission. 12 brave soldiers were chosen to infiltrate a German airbase in Norway and inflict maximum damage. But before they could execute their plan, the Germans spotted them and launched a deadly attack, completely destroying the base and capturing the soldiers. As the surviving soldiers tried to flee through freezing waters, they were caught however, one soldier named Jan managed to escape, running deep into the icy wilderness. But the Germans spotted him too and began chasing him. Jan ran tirelessly through snow and ice until night fell. Deadly cold river. The water was so freezing that entering it could mean instant death, but Jan had no choice. He swam across, and though his entire body was frozen and weakened, he survived because he knew if he got caught, the Germans would kill him without hesitation. As he stumbled through the snow, 2 locals found him and took him to their home. They gave him warm clothes and food. Meanwhile, German officer Kurt Stage arrived at the base where the captured soldiers were held. Upon realizing that only 11 of the 12 men were in custody, he furiously demanded to know where the last one was. The soldiers replied that Jan had escaped but was likely dead due to the extreme cold. But Kurt wasn't satisfied. He wanted proof of Jan's death. He ordered his men to find Jan's body at any cost. The next day, many of the 11 captured soldiers were executed, while the others were tortured in hopes they'd reveal the mission or Jan's whereabouts. Jan, on the other hand, reached an old woman's home who tended to his wounds and gave him the name of a man who could help. As Jan left, German troops arrived at the old woman's house asking about a stranger, but she denied everything. Meanwhile, Kurt was becoming more desperate. He tortured the remaining soldiers further, but got no answers. So, to test if it was even possible for someone to survive in such freezing water, he forced a prisoner to dive in. Survived, Kurt jumped in himself and he too survived, confirming his suspicion. Jan was still alive. Jan then reached the man the old woman had mentioned. At first the man pointed a gun at him, but after Jan explained, he took him inside. His wife and daughter treated Jan kindly, giving him warm clothes and food. That night, the wife, who was a nurse, told Jan that some of her friends worked at a German hospital where Jan's captured friends were being held. Jan was heartbroken to learn that some of them had already been killed. He felt all his efforts were in vain. But then the daughter gave him a map and pointed toward Sweden, a neutral country free from Hitler's control. Jan now decided to flee to Sweden, but the path led through German-patrolled borders. Meanwhile, one of the captured soldiers in the hospital was informed by the nurse that Jan was alive, but he had been tortured so badly that he died on the spot. One by one, the rest of the captured soldiers were executed. Kurt, still obsessed with Jan, falsified a report claiming all 12 soldiers were dead, so he wouldn't be blamed if Jan succeeded in escaping. Jan then met another man, this one owning a ship that could take him near the Swedish border. The man showed Jan a newspaper headline with his name. He was now a symbol, and Kurt had made it personal. He had a perfect record, never letting any prisoner escape. He had earned many honors from Hitler, and Jan's survival would be a devastating blow. That's why he wanted Jan's body as proof, to preserve his pride and reputation. The man dropped Jan at the shore, and from here, Jan had to continue on his own. He skied through frozen terrain and finally reached an area patrolled by Germans. Despite being terrified, he managed to sneak past them only to collapse from exhaustion. Kurt was nearby but didn't recognize Jan, thinking he was a local. As Jan moved further, Kurt suddenly realized who he was and began chasing him by plane, firing bullets, and ran with everything he had left. An avalanche hit, burying Jan and hiding him from the German plane. Buried in snow, Jan was barely alive. His body was frozen, his eyes injured, yet he refused to give up. German soldiers searching the avalanche site found only his belongings, not him. Jan kept moving despite severe injuries. His body was covered in frost, and he was losing strength. Then 2 siblings, Marius and Girta, found him. They recognized him and took him to their home, hiding him despite knowing the *** Germans had issued posters warning that helping Jan meant death by firing squad ***. The siblings cared for him, but Jan was unconscious for 12 days. When he finally woke, he wanted to continue his journey, but Gerda insisted he rest. Meanwhile, Kurt, having found Jan's map, now knew Jan was headed to Sweden. He began personally searching homes in the area. At one point, he nearly found Jan, but dropped his Hitler-given medal and got distracted, narrowly missing him again. To protect Jan, the siblings hid him in a remote cabin, telling him to stay hidden for a few more days. But Jan wasn't doing well. He had nightmares of being captured. One day he noticed that 2 of his toes had turned black. Frostbite. With no choice, he cut them off himself to prevent the infection from spreading. It was agonizing, but it saved his life. After 12 days, Marius and Gerda returned with news. They had arranged for Jan to be transported to Sweden. They carried him on a stretcher to a cave where some boys would guide him. Marius and Gerda were true humanitarians. They didn't care about nationality, only helping people in need. But Kurt was growing anxious. 26 days had passed, and he still hadn't found Jan. In the cave, Jan's condition worsened. Due to the extreme cold, after 4 days, Marius believed Jan must have crossed the border, but then the boys returned, saying they left Jan in the wrong cave. They rushed back and found Jan buried in snow, but still alive. They gave him soup and warmth. Gerda was overwhelmed with joy and thanked God for saving him. That night, the boys returned and carried Jan on the stretcher again. But along the way, they faced trouble and had to leave Jan in another cave. When Jan awoke, he screamed at them in frustration. But they explained that German patrols had increased, and staying hidden was the only safe option. As Jan waited, he recalled painful memories, his failed mission, his dead comrades, and his own guilt. Then, a kind old man began treating him, and the two bonded. The man shared how he too had once escaped captivity, but never forgave himself. For leaving his team behind, he told Jan not to carry that guilt and encouraged him to escape to Sweden and show Kurt that he failed. Meanwhile, Kurt watched a video of himself being honored for catching all 12 soldiers. Knowing the truth was far different, he was rotting inside. Jan, near death, hallucinated the girl who gave him the map. She asked, "Did you lose the map?" He nodded and she replied, "I believe in you. The path of the brave is written by God." After 89 days, Jan emerged from the cave. Today, he had to cross the border into Sweden. Armed with a gun and a plan to hide among herds of animals, he began his journey. But Marius and Gerda remembered something. They had given Jan a signed cloth and feared it could expose them. As they rushed back to clean the area, the Germans arrived and captured them, torturing them brutally for helping Jan. Meanwhile, Jan's stretcher fell, and the Germans spotted him. He ran and hid behind a mountain, ready to end his life with the gun. But suddenly, a reindeer appeared, and Jan accidentally fired the gun, scaring it off. The reindeer dragged his stretcher and Jan with it away from the Germans. Jan, with his last ounce of strength, crossed the border into Sweden. The Germans could do nothing now. Jan couldn't believe it, he was alive. In Sweden, a man found him. Jan's hands were so stiff from gripping the rope that he couldn't speak. He silently thanked the reindeer that saved his life. 3 months later, Jan recovered and submitted his report to his superiors. They awarded him a medal for bravery. But Jan refused the award, saying, "I am not brave." The real heroes are the old woman, Marius, Gerda, and those 4 boys who kept me alive for 150 days. Years passed, the war ended. Marius and Gerda survived. And as for Kurt, after Hitler's death, he was sentenced to death by hanging. And with that, ***, this incredible true story comes to an end. ***, let me know in the comments which movie you'd like me to cover next. ***, thank you so much for all your lovely comments.